right. Week 1 is in the books. My apologies on being a little late with this week, but it was a busy day. Added a lot to this week's report. Shouldn't take as long next week's now that everything's just like the groundwork is already laid out. But anyway, let's get into it. First, let us not forget Phillip, aka Maffle, first one to get eliminated this week or this year. You really hate to see it. I mean, I don't think he had a terrible team. He just had an unfortunate week. Yeah. Moment of silence for Phil. He really gave it his all. Okay. Top 25% of this week, the elite of week 1, those who are going to get the flame and the little star on your slide. I should have listed them here, but you'll know who you are when I get there because I'm going to go in order of score this week. But the average of this group was about 102, and that's 2% up from the projections of about 99. So not really too much better than projection. The big difference here is in the bottom 25%, where the bottom four I should say, besides Phillip, averaged 25% below their projections of 92 for an average of 69. At the very bottom, besides Phillip, was Saunders. And I should say, I'll give Jake his props here. I know Ben doesn't want to hear it, but Jake was number 1 this week. Saunders is going to get the trash can. Looking towards tonight, Eagles-Vikings could be a good game unless the Vikings are frauds, because after losing to the Bucs with Baker, I'm not sure how I feel. The line changed from -7 for the Eagles to -6, so I don't know why. I guess the Gainwell injury, I don't know if that has anything to do with this, the change, but I think I kind of like the Vikings to cover the spread this week. I'm not actually putting money on this, but that's just my gut feel. Probably under 49 too, if I had to guess. So if anyone's got Vikings-Eagles players, get them in. Get it locked in tonight. Okay. How we racked up week 1. Phillip obviously gone. Got his head chopped. I'm probably going to start stacking up the heads here as the weeks go on. But Jake, as we already said, at the very top up there. This throughout the year is going to be a running total of your total points, so it's not going to be every week that I do the rankings 1 to 17 or whatever it'll be as everyone gets chopped. But yeah, Jake at the top, Saunders at the bottom. Not too much to say except for obviously there's a lot more variance in the score compared to projections, and that's to be expected. So 105 at the top, 60 at the bottom. But yeah, I don't think there's that much really to say here. I've got a lot more to get through, so I'm just going to kind of breeze through it. The economy in the league. Basali just made a trade. I forget exactly. He got rid of Sutton. Traded Sutton to Mitchell, I believe, to get a couple bucks. So now he's sitting at the top with 106. A lot of people still at 100 didn't spend anything. They may have gotten some acquisitions for $0, but they saved all their money. JQ, TVR, Jack, Kennedy, Cooper, and then me and some other people spent a little bit, and then down at the bottom you have JC and Potter who spent a lot, at least compared to everyone else. JC spending 25% of his budget in week 1, and Potter almost spending half his budget, 40% of his budget in week 1. So we'll see how that plays out for them. There's less than 1,600 already left in circulation, with the 100 from Phil's team just going into the abyss. But yeah. I'll probably remove this slide after a couple weeks, but just to remind you guys, you're going to get these accolades every week for being the top 25%, bottom 25%, and the highest and lowest scoring teams. We have some new analytics here. This one is just looking at how you did last week versus how you're projected to do this week, all based on sleepers projections. So obviously top right, you were good last week. You're projected to be good again. Top left or bottom right, one's good, one's bad. Bottom left, both bad, and there's actually a lot of people that fall into the both bad category on this one, including myself. Actually, not that many people who are in the yellow this week. It's either like you're good or you're bad. Basically, is what Sleeper's telling you. Another one here. This is the one we saw last week, except for week 2 now. It's Fantasy Calc, which is just a free website that I can plug the league into that can rank everyone's teams, which is just a second perspective on your team compared to what Sleeper thinks of your team. But if you're in the top right, then both Sleeper and Fantasy Calc likes your team, and if you're bottom left, then neither likes your team relative to the average of the league. And same thing here, if you're in the yellow, one does and one doesn't, and there's not a lot of people in the yellow. So they seem to generally agree, Sleeper and Fantasy Calc, on whose team's good and whose team's bad, and whether you want to believe that that's accurate or not is up to you. You don't have to believe it. But Potter is at the very top of Fantasy Calc, which he is not at the very top of Sleeper. Actually, he's second, so you can't argue with it too much. I think he made a big free agent acquisition. We'll get to that when we get to his slides. That's going to help his team a lot. And JC is way up there in both as well. Well above the rest. And lastly, we have, and this is my favorite one. I think this one will be telling. I mean, time will tell on how well this chart accurately, represents how likely you are to get eliminated. Because, by the way, Phillip last week was in the yellow. He was in the bottom right. For this view, Fantasy Calc versus Sleeper, he was roughly around the Basali hue area. Not to say that you two are in danger of being eliminated, but hey, I think all these charts are just, they don't mean anything. Anyone can get eliminated. You can't predict injuries. You can't predict just like absolute dud weeks. So hard to say. But this one is kind of interesting. So this is Fantasy Calc's positional strength, your relative position strength compared to everyone else in the league, compared to how much budget you have left, how much fab you have left to spend. So if you're in the top right, you have strong players and you have a high budget. And we actually see a lot of people in here like me and Ryan who are in the red in both of the other charts. So I don't know. This gives you definitely a perspective. I think it's good to look at the budget you have left. That is very telling on how long you'll last in a league. I mean, of course, if you lose one week, it's all gone. But if you survive, then you have it to spend to drastically improve your team. So I think it's an important thing to look at. So essentially, if you're in the bottom left, according to Fantasy Calc, they are not a fan of your position strength, and you are on the lower side of money to spend. Potter way down here with not a lot to spend. And if you're top left, your players are weak, according to Fantasy Calc. This isn't me saying that, but you have the budget to be able to improve it. And if you're bottom right here in the yellow, then you have strong players, but you have less than average budget to continually improve your team. So, interesting ways to look at it. So now I think this chart is a little more telling because it's not just based on one grid. It's based on all three of those. So if you're in the good up here, if you were in two of the greens, you're in the yellow here. If you're unclear, if you were just a mix of all the above, and you're in the bad if you were in the red twice. You could be like me, Ryan, and Jack, where you're in the red twice, but you were also in the green once, so no yellows. I kind of did these numbers next to your name based on just, you get 1 point if you're in a green, or 1 point per green, half a point per yellow, 0 points per red. So we were in 1 green and 2 reds is what that means, and these 4 down here were in 2 reds and 1 yellow. Yeah, surprisingly here, Hugh comes out on top. He was kind of just around the middle of the pack, but he was in 2 greens and 1 yellow, the only person to be in that group. These other 5 in the green were in the green twice and in the red once. So just one of the different ways of looking at ranking your team does not like your team. So you can go back into those charts and see where you stand. But yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. I think a lot of this is unclear. It's a very even spread of who's in what box here. There's 5, 4, 6, 7. Yeah, I can't count, but yeah. I guess congrats to you guys if you made it in the green. I think generally from my last league I was in, if you're in the green in a lot of these charts, that you're usually not going to get eliminated if you're here. Not to say you can't, but you're probably good. Some just random takeaways I have from this week. I don't know if I'll do this every week, but week 1 there's a lot of unpredictability. And on that note, tight end unpredictability. Kelsey and Andrews obviously being out, and that was not projected when we drafted our team. So those are the top 2 tight ends, both not playing, and they were drafted in the first and second round, respectively. And also only 6 tight ends across the entire league in week 1, and only one of them, only one of them, Hayden Hurst here, Hayden Hurst and what's his name? Pat Fryermuth were the 2 tight ends that caught a touchdown that were actually on someone's team. Hunter Henry caught one, Parham caught one, Blake Bell, and Harrison Bryant. They were not on rosters. These were the top 6 tight ends from last week. Well, actually, top 5. I really wanted to do Harrison Bryant. If you add the decimal, he actually had more points than Hawkinson. So the top 5 tight ends were all not even started. Hurst was rostered, but not started by Hugh. So I find that kind of funny, the top 5 tight ends. There's probably 20 to 25 rostered tight ends across the league, and none of them were in the top 5, except for Hurst. Another thing, defenses. Defenses were huge this week. Obviously, the Jets and the Cowboys, had killer weeks, and mainly the Cowboys. So 2 teams, their top scoring defense top scoring player was a defense, which is just kind of crazy. I don't know how often we'll see that, but week 1 it mattered a lot. Also, 40% of the league had a defense in their top 3 scorers. So that's 7 out of the 18 teams. So I don't think defenses should be overlooked. I think if you have a good defense, it's like free 10 points. Like, they start with 10 and they can only lose points from there. So, I mean, I think defenses could potentially play a big role in the league. They averaged over 10 points across the entire board, even with some teams getting 0 from their defense. The average defensive score was still 10, which is pretty nuts, and obviously that's skewed a bit by the Cowboys and Jets being really high. And also the only team, maybe 2 teams, had a 0 from their defense, but Phillip had 0 from his defense, and he was eliminated. So who knows if there's a correlation there. I'm going to keep an eye on that as the year goes on, but just some random takeaways I had. All right. I'm trying to keep this under like 30, 35 minutes, and looks like I've been going for like 10 already. So let's get this going. I think this is the most anticipated slide here. I wanted to throw it in before going into the individual teams. The rivalry that is brewing between Ben and Jake. This slide took me way too much time to make, but hopefully you guys enjoy it. Jake got the better end of it this week. He was the best team this week on points scored. Ben came in 7th, so Jake takes the lead in this head-to-head rivalry, 1-0. Putting some receipts in here so we can see all the trash that was talked, and also the deal that was made for, whoever survives longer. The loser gives the winner 20. So, we have the receipts. We'll hold them to it. Ben at one point was projected top scorer, maybe midway through Sunday. I forget when it was, but that did not pan out for him. Top left and top right, I have some little charts to compare the 2 teams. You have Jake. If you're looking top left, you got Jake in red. This kind of tells you positional strength. So this is saying that Jake, according to Fantasy Calc, has a stronger quarterbacks and tight ends, but Ben has stronger running backs and receivers. So it's an even matchup, if you ask me, between these 2 teams. I think Jake, we'll get into it on his slide. I think he had a little bit of a fluke week to be number 1. Algier having 2 touchdowns. Not that Algier is going to be bad, but Algier's not getting him 25 points every week. And top right is just a different way of visualizing the same thing, that Jake has better quarterback and tight end, but Ben has better running backs, receivers. I actually don't know why I put both of these. These are pretty redundant. It's just 2 different ways of looking at the same thing. But anyway, Jake is up 1-0. We'll keep looking at that. Also, Ben was kind of hating on Jake for Hawkinson, but Hawkinson was the highest scoring starting tight end, of the 18 tight end, or there could have been more if you put one in your flex, but of all the tight ends that were started across the league, Hawkinson was the highest, and that it's not saying much. I think he scored like 8 points, but it is what it is. Okay, in order. Jake was projected to 2, ended up being the highest scoring team this week. He gets the star. Aaron Jones, Algier, and Mahomes were his top 3 scorers. I mean, Algier, I think, could end up being a great pick for him, but like I said, I think it's a fluke week. 23 points is what he scored. We have the same chart here that we've already seen for Jake. Quarterback, very strong. Tight end, decent. Tight end and running back, decently strong, and wide receivers are a little weak. That's kind of my analysis of this team as well. I think I'm not a fan of his receivers. I liked Thielen, but I don't think Thielen's going to pan out. Van Jefferson, people were really high on without Kupp, but clearly there's other receivers on the Rams that are getting work. Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell. So we'll see how that goes. Hawkinson's good. He should be a solid tight end play every week. But Jake did not acquire anyone this week. He said, I like my team. I'm going to leave it as it is. Still has 100 fab to spend. Mitchell coming in at 2, was projected 10, so well surpassed expectations, and that's helped. That thanks to Ayuk, I would say, scoring him 29. Pretty solid team all around. Trevor Lawrence and Chubb had decent weeks. They should be good basically every week. As you can see from this chart, Fantasy Calc likes Trevor Lawrence at quarterback and says he has pretty strong receivers and running backs, but pretty weak at tight end with Laporta. But I think Laporta's up and coming for sure. He had a good week 1, I would say. And just as I was finishing up these slides, trade was completed between Mark and Mitchell here for Cortland Sutton. So Mitchell acquired Cortland Sutton. It was nobody, no free agents, but traded for Sutton for $7. So 93 left in the bank. All right, Basali, as we said, sitting atop the budget with 106 after that trade with Mitchell. Was projected 4, got 3rd, so pretty accurate on the projection. Diggs and Mike Evans leading the way with Justin Fields doing pretty well. I put exclamations here in the summary because this is exactly what I said about his team before week 1, that he has strong wide receivers but dicey running backs. I mean, his wide receivers were very strong this week. Diggs and Evans on top, but Olave is going to be good. So, well, he doesn't have Sutton anymore. Sutton's gone, so that is a little different. But he acquired Hunter Henry to fix his tight end situation with Dulcich getting injured. Also added Irv Smith and the Bucks D. All that for only $1. I think the $1 was on Henry. So I think he's being smart with his fab here. I think he's got a good team. Should be safe. The running backs are the only problem. He's got Rashad White, and after that, I don't know what it is. This is just who he drafted. I don't have it in front of me who his running backs are right now. I think he started McKinnon last week, and that was rough, but we'll see. We'll see. Scored 100 points. One of 4 teams to score 100. Maybe he was like just below 100, but I'm rounding. So Johnny, I said, went heavy on the rookies last week, and I think it worked out for him so far. I mean, Anthony Richardson is a rookie and was his highest scoring player. The rushing upside's definitely there. Calvin Ridley and Justin Jefferson, his first 2 picks, very much worked out for him. I think my question was, is Calvin Ridley really going to be good? Like, how is he going to live up to his ADP? And I think so far he has. Looked really good. Johnny acquired Allen Robinson for $1. And yeah, this chart here has him very strong at wide receiver, but not super strong anywhere else. Anthony Richardson's pretty good, but Fantasy Calc doesn't love him, I guess, yet. I mean, this will update as the season goes on. But pretty weak at tight end and running back, I would say. 98 points. Johnny gets the flame. I forgot to mention for the previous ones, I think Johnny is the... he got 4th. So yeah, top 4 got a flame, but top 1 gets the star. All right. Potter. I said he was the 18th projected last week, but got 5th. And I didn't think he'd be this high, but I didn't think he was getting eliminated either. Definitely top heavy with Tyreek Hill getting 39 points. So that'll help. But Cooper Kupp being out definitely hurts him. This chart has him very strong at wide receiver because it's including Cooper Kupp, and looking at the whole season, seeing that Cooper Kupp will eventually come back. Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp can be deadly, but he doesn't have him for at least until week 5. Brock Purdy and the Falcons defense doing him well. I'll give him a shout out for that Falcons defense pick. I really wanted to draft them. He got them in the last round. He snatched them from me, and that was kind of a sleeper pick there. But acquired Jacobs. He was the biggest spender this week. Jacobs and the Giants defense. I think Jacob was all of this. I think he either spent 36 or 38. Already almost down to half his budget, so we'll see how that pans out for him. But he should be safe this week. Now he'll have Jacobs and Cook, I believe, as his 2 RBs. So looking pretty good there, but has him pretty low at tight end. But I like Freiermuth, or he traded Freiermuth, didn't he? It's hard to keep track of it all. When there's less teams, I can't wait for there to be less teams. There's less teams for me to analyze. It's hard to go super in-depth into all of your teams, but Fantasy Calc has them a little weak at tight end. Okay, 6th. JC. Projected 13th, so pretty high above his expectation last week. He had Aaron Rodgers get 0 points and go down, but he spent on Hurts $26. I don't think that's an overpay. I mean, Hurts could be the number 1 quarterback this year, fantasy-wise, so I don't think it's an overpay as long as that's his quarterback for the rest of the season, which I think it would be. Huge week from Jacoby Myers. That helped him a lot this week as a later draft pick. It was huge. Etienne and Zay Flowers also having good games. Zay Flowers was kind of a later pick as well as third wide receiver. So his third and fourth wide receivers being two of his top three players is pretty cool. Jamar and Debo did not live as much up to their expectations, but they should be fine. It seems like a pretty solid team with Hurts now. Ben, as we said, he got 7th this week compared to Jake's first, so Jake's not going to let him live that down until something changes that. We'll see how they match up this week, but Christian McCaffrey being his big scorer, his first overall pick, or first round pick, not surprising. 49ers defense, to point out again, a lot of defenses in the top 3 scorers of every team. And Nico Collins, I guess that was a good grab later in the draft. We'll see how Juju ends up panning out for the Patriots, but it seems like there's some other receivers that are doing work, like Jacoby Myers on the... Jacoby Myers on the... Ignore me. Jacoby Myers isn't there anymore. But Kendrick Bourne had a good week. Acquires Justice Hill and Lazard for $8. I think all the $8 was on Justice and Lazard was $0. I think that's a good spend. To be determined if Hill versus Justice Hill versus Gus Edwards, like how that's going to work out in the Ravens' backfield. But Hill had 2 touchdowns last week when Gus Edwards, I believe he was active, right? So we'll see. I think Gus Edwards is already on someone else's team. So, but one last thing to note, I do think this is a very top-heavy team with like McCaffrey and Waddle and I guess you could say the 49ers defense, but I don't think there's a ton of depth here. Jameson Williams suspended. I just don't think there's a ton of depth here, but that can easily be fixed with free agency. Hugh, the one who was favored the most among the 3 charts that I made, in 2 greens and 1 yellow. So the charts like him, the numbers like him, even though he was just around the middle of the pack this week. But yeah, he did not make any acquisitions. Still has all 100 of his fab. He's got Barkley and Stevenson. A reminder that he's the only team that drafted 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds. I guess the analytics likes that, I guess. Big week from Tua this week. He's strong at quarterback and running back. Not super strong at receiver and tight end. D-Hop being his top receiver. Kirk had a bad week. Oh yeah, he has Gus Edwards. Here's the guy who has Gus Edwards. This is going to turn out to probably be a great pick for him. Gus Edwards and Hurst. Hurst was one of the top tight ends last week, but he was on his bench, so he might actually have to have a decision to make between Higbee and Hurst this week. All right, 9. Halfway through the teams, almost. James, big week from the Cowboys defense. He was going into Sunday night. I want to say he was the favored. He and Phillip were right at the top 2 of favorite to get eliminated based on projected points before the Cowboys put up a 40 burger on the Giants. Well, 40 in terms of fantasy points. CeeDee Lamb also had a good week for him. Lamar, not so much, but that still made his top 3 scorers, and if that tells you anything, it's the only single-digit scorer that was in someone's top 3, so very top-heavy here. And James with a 0 RB, as he's put it, the negative RB strategy. Does not have a lot of running backs. He acquired A.J. Dillon and Zeke, though, so that should help fix that. Honestly, these might be his 2 starters. Not even joking. It was Charbonnet and Foreman last week, wasn't it? You can correct me if I'm wrong, but these might be his 1 and 2 this week, which is definitely an upgrade, but the chart here still has him as pretty weak at running back. Also, I should mention this chart does not look at defense, and that's just the limitation of the site being free. But I do think defenses matter. It's just not included in this chart. So, all right, TVR, big week from Herbert, decent week. I mean, Chargers lost, but good fantasy week from Herbert. Bijan with great week. Romeo Dobbs also looking great. Looking back at his draft, I'm not sure how long I'll keep these, look backs at your draft, because a couple weeks in, your team is going to look so much different from where you drafted. But for these first couple weeks, I think it really is. You do perform basically on how well you drafted, on top of the few people you acquire. But did not draft early receivers at all. But Dobbs stepped up for him. Tony is terrible after the first week. Maybe he'll turn it around. Godwin's all right. The rankings have him very strong at running back, because that's looking at Jonathan Taylor being one of his top 3 running backs behind Bijan Robinson and Pierce. Even though Taylor isn't playing, this is a rest of season rank, and it's saying he's got really strong running backs. So he acquired nobody and still has 100 fab. The way I look at it is if he can survive to week 5, he's going to become a very strong team with Jonathan Taylor, assuming he plays. And if he can fix up the wide receivers in free agency, he'll be good to go. Coming in at 11th, we got Jack. And not a ton to say here. He got Boston Scott for free. $0 sells 100. He really just had no duds on his team this week is the way I looked at it. His top 3 weren't very high scoring, with 16 being his highest score from Amon-Ra. Roschon Johnson stepped up as I predicted. Sorry, Ryan. I didn't think it would be this early that Roschon would get involved, but I think Roschon's taking the starting job from Khalil Herbert by like week 5 or something would be my guess. Ravens defense. I don't have his whole lineup here, but when I was looking at it, he had like no duds. It was like everyone scored at least 6 points, which is really all you can ask for in this kind of a league. Puts him around the middle of the pack, kept him safe. I think he's got a solid team here, top to bottom. Still a lot to spend. Coming in at 12 was Kennedy. Fell below his expectations, and that is obviously because of Kelsey being out week 1. He should be back this week. I don't know. If not, he's only going to miss one more week probably. But clearly this team was fine without Kelsey. Still around the middle of the pack without his first round pick. Had a big week from his wide receivers, Michael Pittman and Metcalf. And yeah, the RBs were a little shaky, or they are a little shaky. I like Gibbs, but after that there wasn't much. I think Deion Jackson's supposed to be the starter this week for the Colts, so that's good for him. P. Ryan was solid as RB2 behind Javonte Williams, but yeah, I think this team's solid. He acquired Shaheed in the Colts defense. I think the Colts have a good matchup this week. I forget who it is, but I remember thinking like, okay, yeah, that was a good matchup. Yeah, still a lot to spend. Decent team here. All right, Joey, aka Big Fudge, coming in at 13th. Was projected second to last, so definitely exceeded his expectations a little bit. Pollard had a big week. Kirk Cousins had a good week. Andrews was out. That's kind of the funny thing too, is he went above expectations even without his second round pick and starting tight end. I forget who he started. He might have started the backup, likely. I forget who he did, but I don't likely didn't have a good week. You can ignore me if you didn't even start him, but I think he did. Eagles defense, another defense, being a top performer for someone. Acquired Mostert from a trade with Ryan, I believe, so sitting at 92 fab, didn't make any free agent claims. And I don't know if Andrew's going to be back this week. I think I saw he's still questionable, so we'll see about that. The only thing I'll have to say is I don't think this team is very deep, and he didn't make any acquisitions to make me think otherwise. So, yeah, that's about all I got to say here. Now me. Starting, I'm the first Ice Cube. I'm the bottom 25%. If you were 14th or 17th, you got either the Ice Cube or the trash can, so I have acquired my first and hopefully last Ice Cube. But Breece Hall ended up panning out for me nicely. He had some injury concerns going into the season, so he fell to the third to me, which I'm very happy with the value I got him for. But 15 being my highest score is pretty pathetic. Danny Dimes did me nothing. My 2 highest scores came on the Monday night game, which is kind of funny. Definitely had me sweating going into that game. But I didn't do too much. I acquired Bourne and Atwell, just some value guys for $2. Still have 98. I think my team was pretty uninspiring across the board, and I'm just sticking with my guys basically. I'm hoping they just have a better week. There's no way they all have bad weeks again. So I think I'll be fine. Fingers crossed though. All right, the next Ice Cube, we got Ryan falling way below his expectations, and I can I won't apologize, but as the resident Bengals fan, I know his second and third round picks of Higgins and Burrow definitely hurt him. So sorry about that. Taken to the goose egg. 8 targets though, and then Burrow just really bad game. I think he got like 4 points. But Eckler kept Ryan alive this week. In all honesty, I don't see Ryan. Ryan could have definitely been chopped this week if Eckler also had a bad week, but he didn't. So. Montgomery, good week for Montgomery. Another defense in the top 3. Ryan made a lot of acquisitions. I think we also got rid of a lot of guys in trades, but interesting to see how this works out because he got Addison, Zay Jones, and Josh Reynolds for a total of 18. I think it's not terrible. It is kind of a lot to spend on guys like Zay Jones and Reynolds that might not be start worthy in like 3 weeks. I don't know, but we'll see how that plays out. It should. They're good pieces for now. But Ryan still has 99. That's the big catch here. He's traded a lot of guys away for Fab, so he's basically net even on the Fab after who he's lost and who he's acquired. So we'll see. This is Goff's team now, according to Ryan. He got rid of Burrow and brought in Goff, or not brought in Goff. He drafted Goff. Now Goff's his guy, and I like Goff, so I have no problem with that. But you're basing it off of 1 week, Ryan. Come on, Joe Burrow and T Higgins are going to step it back up. He still have T though, so you're sticking with him. Cooper coming in 16th, exactly where he was projected. I think I was also exactly where I was projected at 14th, but Jets defense, top scorer. Derrick Henry getting him a good amount of points. Josh Allen as well. I mean, Josh Allen didn't have a good game, I wouldn't say, but 12 points is enough to be his third highest scorer. Acquired Marvin Jones for 0. Still has 100 Fab. I'm sorry, I haven't hit everyone's little grid here, but you can see it and know what it's saying. It still thinks he's strong at quarterback even after a bad week from Josh Allen. Running backs are decent, led by Henry, and tight end and wide receiver are a little weak. I have to agree with that. Keenan Allen and Gabe Davis are all right. Acquired Marvin Jones. Maybe he'll be a flex play this week, but he had 2 goose eggs on his team this week. That really did not help him. But the Jets defense carried him to a win, and I think... Yeah, like I said, he's got some shaky flexes, so I think it's shaky enough that I think Marvin Jones is probably starting in there, which I think he'll do better than we saw last week. Coming in last, but not last, technically, is Saunders. He gets the trash can. Just barely survived by 0.3 points. If we just saw one more Lazard catch, if that punt wasn't returned for a touchdown by the Jets, we could have seen one more Lazard catch in overtime and Saunders would be gone, but instead it's Phillip. But Saunders was led the way by Derek Carr, 16 points. Brian Robinson and Miles Sanders having decent weeks. According to the chart, he's not really super strong anywhere, but only weak at tight end. He's kind of average across the board. He didn't really have any breakout guys this week, but he acquired McLaurin to give him some more wide receiver strength. So I think this team could be fine. I mean, I don't want to make any huge assumptions. I think any team could get cut this week. That's it for Saunders' team. And one last little look at Phillip. He will not be seen again on any of these slides going forward. But one last look at how he did last week. He had Addison, Jalen Hurts, and J.K. Dobbins as his top scorers. Josh Jacobs didn't have a fantastic week for being his first round pick, but it's weird. I don't think he had a terrible team. It just no one helped him out that much this week besides Jordan Addison being a later pick and being his top scorer. But J.K. Dobbins got him 11 points before I think it was his Achilles, but either way, out for the season. J.K. Dobbins equals pain. If anyone else in their other fantasy leagues says J.K. Dobbins, I'm sorry. It's a brutal existence if you have J.K. Dobbins. But he had some solid pieces go to waivers, and almost all of them got picked up. I think Jacobs, Hurts, not Dobbins. McLaurin, Dillon, Addison, Zeke, Lazard, Jones. No one picked up Okonkwo, I don't think. Everyone of his first 9 picks is now on someone else's team, so we'll see how that shakes out for everyone. But 59.7 was not enough. Not enough to get him on to the next week, but... I think I passed my 30-minute goal, but I think I decently got through this. My phone's been blowing up this entire time. I don't know if you guys are hearing it buzzing on my desk, but good luck to everyone this week. Vikings Eagles tonight should be fun to watch. Yeah, that's it.